Hi, this is Matt from Skybo, and in this video I would like to give you some tips and tricks on how to improve the user experience of your SharePoint solutions. A couple of points. The goal would be to make a lean, clean user interface. SharePoint out of the box has so many buttons and this and that and everywhere, so we try to make it as clean and lean as possible for the end user. Also, that you guide the users where to click, make primary buttons like we see here, etc. That it's super simple to understand how to use the solution, and there is lowest efforts on training needed. Also make things role-based. So use visible expressions, roles to make stuff visible only if it's really needed for that person. Maybe hide things, make stuff visible only when it's in a certain phase or for a certain group of people, like admins, for example, and so on. That's what I would like to show you as well today. And of course, what we always try to do, we try to leverage as most as possible from the out-of-the-box possibilities. SharePoint itself has a lot of out-of-the-box things you might not know or but it's a lot of things, especially on views, that we can use to really improve the user experience on SharePoint. I have examples to make things better on pages, so on side pages, but also on views and on forms. And that's what I would like to show you today. So jumping directly into the demo, let's switch over. So my demo site, as always, and I really polished it with polished the user interface. This here is my expense demo case, and on this, what we often use is our action automation action web part, which looks like a quick links control, but for those of you who know it, it's much more powerful. You can make these buttons using visible expressions to show it only to a certain group of people. So one example that I wanted to show you here is what I often do in my projects is I create a specific space or area for the admin of the site. So I create a SharePoint group in the background, administrators, and then I'm adding here in the left area a button, I call it settings, which goes directly to a SharePoint site where I just provide everything needed for the admin. For example, I have this admin group directly available here, so it's much easier to just click on it. And those are Skybo automation actions again. Just put it on this administration side. And if I click on this admin, I directly get to the group. And it can be quite complicated to go to the permissions and then to groups and then find the right group, etc. So I simply provide all the groups, and in my case, it's those are directly my roles. So I have an admin role and I have a management role, where my process is an expense process with a two-step approval. First is the line manager, directly the line manager, and the second approval is a management group, and that's the one here. So also to maintain this group, it's directly available on the administration page as well. One click and you're in there to maintain the people in there. Same is if you want to provide some additional lists like the cost centers here, I would put them here. Everything that an admin would need, I would put on the page. And if we go now one step back to the start page, this is where I have my button And if I would switch over to a non-admin, like this one, that's my demo user, John Smith, this guy wouldn't see that button at all. So it's much more clean. He has no permissions as well to change the page, etc. You definitely know that people, if they have admin or not admin, but if they have contribute rights on a site, they will always click edit and the site is checked out, etc. So this I would completely remove by adding people only on read permissions on the site so that they have no access on the site pages to change them here. And the admin section is gone as well. And it's really simple. It's just a separate web part, and you can theoretically do permissions on every single button here to add a visible expression. And since the last week, in the last release, we also introduced the possibility on the whole web part here to specify a visible condition. And in my case, it's very simple. I'm just using that as member of group. And this one I'm using very often to reuse that groups as roles. So show and hide things for certain groups is that simple function here. Checking the group, when it's true, it's checking if for nested groups as well, if it should go into nested groups and to check there as well. Otherwise, you can say false. But that's it on the whole web part, and the whole web part would disappear if I'm not in that group. So what I did in other projects, I added several web parts like this with 4 or 5 buttons, and role-based, every web part was targeted to another group. So only if you are in a certain group, you would see those buttons. And as you know, the buttons can be configured to do anything or quite a lot with our action builder. So here I added it to this right zone, and the whole web part is only visible to the admins. Right. If we would now, so on the page, I would keep it clean. I would make buttons, maybe like I have here as well, some in this bigger style, maybe some are in smaller style, which are less relevant, and put your lists on the pages. So that's basically on the page what I wanted to show today. But if you go forward to the list views, there's a lot more possible. So first of all, if we go to that list view, we see it also looks quite clean because I was using this or I was modifying these command bar actions on the top, and there is this out of the box possibility which is on the view itself. So if you go to view and say format, you can do these JSON formatting, and we have a best practice that we providing on our portal. So if we go to our portal, we have 2 articles. We started about form styles and also views and column formatting samples, where we provide you our examples. So after the webinar, you can download it from here. So for example, this one, and it's traded for collaboration. So it was just our initial article. We added some styles here. You can always download the JSON from examples from our GitHub. So it's all linked here. So you can download that JSON from here. And if you have your own styles, feel free to also contribute them here. Just log in and put in your own example of styles. So what I've done here is a couple of things. I and it's using this command bar props. This is the out-of-the-box SharePoint feature, and you can basically they change all the buttons and commands. You can change the title of them, make it more, instead of just new or new item, name it like new expense request. What is it? And then each one each button, and by default you have lots of buttons, forms, and integrate, automate. It's very confusing for the end user. The ones you don't need, simply hide them using hide equals true. And you can also change the position. So as you can see, if you select an item, we have some more like edit, copy, and delete. Those are still here. I always leave the version history and alert one as well here in this submenu. And there are also some from me that I've added using Skybo list actions. So, for example, this little house icon, this home icon, I added this one, especially if you want to use the solution in a Teams. So, if you integrate that into Teams, so for example here, my demo channel, and our solutions fully work in Teams. You can use everything from here. You see the settings, you have the button, you have the buttons, the panels will work, etc. So, but what happens because in Teams you don't have the main navigation. So if you go into a list, for example, you just see the list itself. So there's no way to go back to home. That's why I added this little home action. It's basically going back to the site URL. And that's why I have it here. So when I'm inside Teams, then I always, on the list, I place this home. I can click and I'm getting back to home. Of course, it would be the same right-click and reload tab, but who will do that? No one. So it's much easier to understand. So to get back to my start page, that's why I added a little home, which is simply an open web page action, nothing else going to the site, the root of the site. So that's why I added this home. Then I have added some other actions here, and with the position, I can specify and even split them, having some out-of-the-box actions in between. So this is position 0, then the new button is position 1, for example. So that's what we can see here. Simply say position equals 1. This is 1. This one would be 2. Edit is 3. Edit is 3. Copy is 4. So you can specify everything like this. And our actions that are configured on the view, and I'll quickly show you in the backend. So here, these are on the view, the list actions. Those are my actions that I've configured. And every out-of-the-box action will just positioned in between, or where you have positioned them from the number of the position. And it's pretty cool that you can, have a really combination of Skybo list actions, but also out-of-the-box buttons. And so this one is just a default. You can simply just copy paste it into it. It's per view. That's a bit a downside, of my opinion. You have to do it for every new view that you create. But so the first part, this additional row class will make this these banded rows like gray, white, gray, etc. And then the second part is this command bar props, where you can change the style and the order and so on. What I did here as well is a pretty new feature that we have as well, is that we can hide certain views. So as you know, there's no permissions for views, but in some scenarios you don't want to show a view to everyone. So the thing that we can do is, or how we do it at least, is we hide certain views, so you only see the views that are available to everyone. And then I'm adding here some links to views. And if I click here, so for example, all views is only available for the admin group. If you click there, we go to all items. It's a separate view, which is hidden. You see, it's nothing selected. And it's only visible to me as an admin. If I would open it up as John, and I would go to my list, I used to have 3 views in the admin, and here the John will only have 1. So that's how it's not really security. It's not a security feature, because if you know the URL, then for sure you will still get there. But we hide views, and that's done in Solution Studio here. On the views, you can list on the list the same. You can make the list hidden, and we can do that the same on the views. So we simply hide those views that I don't want to show to everyone, like this one, and these. So 4 are hidden, and then on the view here, I simply add a group and then a button, and also here it's simply checking if I'm admin, and I will do an open page and go to that view. That's how I can still have some role-based views, which is they are located up here. I cannot show them here, but even if you have a lot of views with the new look and feel, it's taking so much space. Anyway, I don't like it personally, but yeah. So I have them up here, and yeah. So that's another thing. What I always propose, and I don't know why it's not default, is activate the profile pictures. So on every column, people picker column, simply go to edit, show profile photos, and it's much more user friendly if you see a face of the people inside. Should be default in my opinion, but anyway, that's another tip that I always activate people picker fields. Another thing is that we used to add it's it maybe on a start page, a specific column for this for view and edit. So of course you can click to open, you can double click, you can right click and say edit, and so on. But these columns are really helpful, and they are also displayed on sublists. So if you have a sublist on a dossier, on a form, those are shown as well. So if you scroll down and you select an ad, you don't have to click on edit on the top. You can click everywhere just directly on this little button, and it will show you the display form or the edit form. And the column is really simple. It's also available on our portal. In here, it's the action column. Simply add a text column called actions, and then use the formatting options on the list and simply place that JSON there. Thanks. Just the text column, it has no content at all. Place it there, and yeah, that's default. You can simply copy paste, you have nothing to change. Another thing I find quite helpful is when I work with documents, and here in that solution we have, for example, a library with finalized or approved documents. I always add, and it's pretty similar to the actions column, I add a preview column. It's also just a text column and a formatting, but it will give you a little preview, and if you hover over, you see it a little bigger. So that helps already to you don't have to open it. You click on it, you already see if you have different ones. Is it a letter? Is it an image or whatever? That's, to me, I think that's quite helpful, and it also works on the on our forms. So if you have an item like this, and you have a sub-library. You see it. You see, okay, that's an image, that's a list here, that's something almost empty, test file, and something like this. Of course, we do have that preview as well, if you select, but yeah, it takes some seconds to load. So for me, combination, if you have space to do it, then I always do it like that. And it's also available here as a second one for you to download. All right. Yeah, but last but not least about the views. So what I always do, if I have some specific actions here on the top, so for example, this generate document, or if I have a declined one here, I have an option to reopen it. And as a tip, or how we do it as best practices, I always provide the same actions as well as list actions. And we just recently made it much easier to do because now if you go to the display form and you see that action here on top, go to actions. And since the last update, you can also copy action buttons. So this reopen, I simply copy, then I switch over to the list actions. And if you press the plus now, it's in my clipboard and I can simply add it here. I have everything, of course, the context I have to specify that is selected item, but I have my visible expression. I have all my actions configured. So we made it much easier to copy from display form to the list view. And therefore, you don't have to open every single item. You could do it directly from the view. For example, if you want to create multiple reports, you have it here. You don't have to open up every single item and then press the report button here. So that's another thing I would do. Just bring them also to the list view. Then coming to forms. So first of all, we created some styles that we use for the user guidance. So really point the user's view to the most important button, making it primary, for example, or a secondary button, or this one, which is a gray style. So we have them here as well on the community. Sorry, it's community here. And then it's the second one. There are a couple of examples. And the one I was talking about is this one, command bar button style. We do have a dark one, a light one, and a gray one. You can download them from here and simply import it on the specific button. So it's a control style for a certain button. You import that style, and you can have a focus on the primary button like this. Second one is also a very new feature is about the form title. A form title, as you know, by default, display edit form will show you the title. That's it. On the new form, you always see new item. So now with the latest update from last week, we have the possibility to double click the title, and here it's already changed. I will reset it. By default, you have that form title. If you click edit, we simply put in title, so that's the default. But you can now, for example, put something in front of it, like a prefix. What is it exactly? And also on the new form, there are two ways here. I still have the old way implemented. So, like adding, text box for my title, and the official or the original title is hidden. But we could also do that instead of hiding it. We could also double click it, and again here say new expense request. If you use placeholders in here, like employee user, etc. This would be automatically evaluated when you change it. So the employee, if you change it, it will be automatically evaluated. But like this, simply double click or press that icon, you can change the title of the form. Same for edit form, which makes it more easy to understand than generic titles. And sometimes you don't want to have the title because the title is maybe not used, or you have first name, last name, and the title is the last name. So you want to have first name, last name. So then simply use as an expression, first name, last name. So pretty simple. Then, this process steps control helps really to show the current status. In our processes, we often use a combination of this phase and status. So those are two choice columns where you can easily configure the phase, and per phase I have a status below. And you can even do styling like I did here. So this one was pushed back from the management with missing information. That's why I have this style here. Or if I have an approved one, it stays green because it's finished and approved. And if it was declined, I added some styles that it makes it red. It's declined. And I also see, also with styles, I added the style, okay, this has been declined by the line manager, not the management, and the management has been skipped by that. And those are simple styles on the web part. So if you go to style editor, you go down here, you see that's the process steps control, and I added some styles. And those styles have rules. And you see, if it's declined to finished, I have kind of red style. And it's only if the expense status includes decline. It can be declined by the management. It can be declined by the line manager. That's why I used include, so that to cover both. And this is how this gets red, for example. And missing information makes it this orange style for the background, and so on. So I simply add styles to make it even more representing the actual status with rules on the styles per phase, or and the status itself is added on the web part. So if you choose the phase, so for each phase, you can specify, for example, in the description, the status. All right, I'm running out of time. That's what I expected to hear, of too many things to show. So three more things. One is add. We always use numbers on the tabs, because if you have lots of tabs, you don't have to, user don't have to click on each tab to see if there's something in it. So it's simply a number. You see there is something. If it's 0, you don't have to click. And it's really just on the tab, you double click and you make the tab name dynamic by adding a sublist count, which comes from all the sublists you have. You can expand, and just any column which has for sure a value, you can click and say count. So you put brackets, count, and it will automatically count. If you add a new item, it automatically increases. And that's best practice, what we always do. It's so much better to navigate. You don't have to click over and over again. Second last is this left, right, or left labeled look and feel. By default, you have all the labels and the fields below each other. And we implemented a style which is also available here. I think it's one of the first here, to get at left, right. It's with 30 and 70%, a percentage that can be downloaded here as well to get that slimmer design to have it more compact, because the out of the box will give you takes a lot of space. So this is provided here as well for you to download and then simply import it in the style sections, in the general style sections, to get this layout. Last but not least, we have two column specific things. So one is both of them are on the edit form. So, or a new or edit form. Whoops, I have to take one which is not yet submitted. For example, this one. So first is an error style. Not here, it's on a new form. I'm sorry. So if you add a new item, and by default, these error styles, they're very, you don't see them very well. So we have this implemented, this error style, which makes the whole field red and visible. The label will be red, etc. Not just that little red text. And it's also, it's really if the field is valid or invalid, it will show. It can be invalid if it's required and not filled, or if you have a validation on it. If I would take the same user, I have a validation on it, and that's the same. So I cannot save it right now, and the style is applied if that's the case. If I put in John, someone else, which will work, then the style is gone. And we do have that other style that will show, and that's the change style, because in so this style will visualize if you've changed the field. What happens quite often is you open up a form, maybe an edit form, you have a lot of fields, you make some changes to some of the fields, then you're interrupted, you're interrupted by someone else, or you go grab a coffee, go to the toilet, whatever. You come back and you don't remember what did you change already. So now you can just save it, and then maybe you save something you did not want to save, or you cancel, you do all your changes. So with this style, this will help you, and if it's green and this red orange border or not, you can change it. It's also just the style you can download from here, what we call a changed input style. It's added on the general styles on the field. Just import it, and because all our fields, as soon as you change them, they have a flag is changed, and that's what we take and load then the style as soon as you change the field. And the same is for the error. So if you have an error, it would load, and it's also just the style you can import on the fields. It's just on display form, it doesn't make sense, but here I can show you. I have a general style just for this labeling left, right. I have this change style and I have the error style. And just for you to know, this order is important because it's like in CSS, the last one will be the strongest. So if there's an error, even if it's changed, that will be shown. So the error style, it will be stronger than the change style. That's why I have it at as a last style. But those are these separate styles. You can use them on new and edit forms too. Make also on the forms the user experience much better. With these tricks, using SharePoint out-of-the-box possibilities, but also Skybo features, I'm sure your users will love SharePoint.